AI is going to be playing a really big role in our lives in the future.
Everybody needs someone in their life.
People are really, kind of seeing their city from a new perspective.
Today on Spotlight, a local student learns to code and now competes around the world with Team USA, winning 2 gold medals. Plus, how the infamous Dred Scott case came to be and what resulted from it. And then protecting your skin from blue light exposure. Hear what experts have to say. But first, a book with 6 suggested walking tours of Kirkwood to help you discover stories of the town. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
Driving through Kirkwood is one way to see the town. But to really experience how it stacks up with the rest of suburbia, you've got to walk it.
I feel like downtown Kirkwood is a really exceptional example of walkability.
And Kathy Schrank should know. She's an author who specializes in books about exploring the outdoors, especially on foot. So when St. Louis-based Reedy Press was looking for someone to create a book of walking tours around Kirkwood, Kathy Schrank's experience gave her a leg up.
The research was pretty easy, literally right out my front door.
Schrank moved to Kirkwood with her family 10 years ago, but her knowledge of the city was limited to its most obvious landmarks. Now her book, Kirkwood, A Walk Through History, offers visitors 6 guided strolls past less obvious points of interest, including her own neighborhood, where Kirkwood began.
The Argonne Historic District is some of the oldest houses in the town, some of them that were built by the original founders of Kirkwood.
And because those founders had ties to the railroad, they built those houses on large plots of land close to what would become Kirkwood's best-known landmark, the train station. It's even featured on the city's seal. But the downtown Kirkwood train station was not the only one in town. Walk number 6 is a tour of an area at the west end of Kirkwood known as Merrimack Highlands, which was originally a resort community with its own railroad depot.
Frisco Station was where people would get off the train to come to Merrimack Highlands, and so that became a private residence. And it kind of fell into disrepair, and then it was revitalized, and then it's changed hands recently, but it's been a private home for quite a while and is really beautiful.
Not all the walking tours feature such glamorous history. Meacham Park is an historically African-American neighborhood annexed by Kirkwood in the 1990s. Most of its oldest buildings are gone, and some of the neighborhood has been lost to redevelopment. But Meacham Park still exists and still has a story to tell.
I thought it was really important for people to know the history, and you can learn about how those kids who lived in Meacham Park had to walk 2 miles in some cases to get to the school that was set aside for Black students. And then the efforts that the parents there made to get a school in Meacham Park, and that's where that Turner School that is on the National Register of Historic Places comes in.
Another neighborhood featured in the tour of the East Monroe Historic District is known informally as the Bohemian Enclave, with its signature feature, the Topsy-Turvy House.
It was kind of known as an area for like professors and kind of artsy people. It was kind of rumors that there was like wild parties and things going on over there. But I think it's just really interesting architecture.
Some of the other places featured in the book are still around, much as they were. Others have become something else, and still others are long gone.
Being able to have that kind of guidance, they walk around Kirkwood all the time, but with this, they can have sort of a theme to their walk and a purpose, and I've gotten a lot of feedback about that, and that people are really, kind of seeing their city from a new perspective.
Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
One of my biggest passions is to just code. Inside of school, I chose to self-study the AP Computer Science and take the test. And I also am part of like the robotics club, and I'm also vice president of the computer programming club. I went to a camp at WashU for app development, game development in like 6th or 7th grade. And I realized I really like coding and like building things, seeing like an app, something that I built, like being able to be displayed, like kind of come to life in a sense. So that really made me want to get into programming because this is a field where I can create anything. So I started kind of looking into like algorithms, looking into competition because I previously did math competition already. So I was like, maybe this is going to be fun. As I kind of like got myself deeper into learning about algorithms, learning about problem solving, it became much more interesting to me, and I think I just continued that cycle. One of the biggest competitive programming competitions is known as the USA Computing Olympiad, so I'm gonna refer to it as the USACO. I think it was kind of a natural progression because most high school students in the US that do competitive programming are going to start on like the USACO because by progressing up to different levels, you can eventually get invited to international competitions. You just register, you make an account, and there are 4 contests a year, 4 to 5 hours, and they have 3 problems for you to solve. So depending on how well you do on these problems, and if you pass a certain cutoff, then you promote to the next level. I guess I just started from there. It was just repetitive practice, looking up new algorithms, seeing the solutions, trying to implement code yourself. There are 4 tiers, so bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. So once you promote to USACO Platinum, if you continue competing, you can be eligible to be invited to the USACO training camp. And based on how you perform there, they then select the top 4 spots at the European Girls Olympiad in Informatics, so EGOI. I had done what I did to like deserve to be in camp. So I think I was really there to like try to just do my best and get to know some of the other people who are also in camp, and I really did that. I think I was a lot more relaxed at camp because I was feeling good about myself. After I realized I was in EGOI, the stress started setting in. The competition format is that there are 5 hours to solve 4 problems. So what I did was I spent basically the entirety of June just preparing. My routine would look something like 3 or 4 times a week. So I would do a 5-hour contest. And then I would eat, I would come back, and I would try to solve all the problems I didn't get to solve, like look at the solutions. So basically, contest practice would take up an entire day for me. The entire trip to Sweden was a week long, including arrival and departure, and there were 2 days for contests. So the first day was kind of just setting up, like testing the room we were in, and then after that we had our first contest. So that was 5 hours, 4 problems. The day after that, we had an excursion to the zoo, and then after that was the second day, and that was the second contest, and then the closing ceremony on the last day, and then departures. We had 2 gold medals, we had 1 silver medal and 1 bronze medal. So this is, even though we go as a team, there is an individual competition. So I think we did really well this year. I think this is the best we've done in terms of past years that the USA has competed. I want to continue competing at least. I want to go to next year's EGOI, which is going to be hosted in the Netherlands. So I'm definitely going to continue like just at least practicing, making sure I don't do worse than I did last year, and trying to make the training camp and EGOI again, because both of them I feel like were really good experiences. And decided that right now I'm focusing on college applications. I'm still playing flute, I'm still like doing math competition, things like that. I wanted to go into artificial intelligence because with the development of ChatGPT, I feel like AI is going to be playing a really big role in our lives in the future, and I am seeing like the possibilities that we can do with it, like in medical fields, in like environmental sustainability fields, and even like just technological development research. I feel like AI can do so much things, and I want to be able to use it to better our community, to like, I guess, make people's lives easier. For computer science, it's really a matter of persistence. I think my biggest advice would be to like know why you started, like know why you're interested, and hold that thought in you while you're practicing when you feel the urge to give up, because I feel like it took a long time for me to become accustomed to coding itself. So don't give up really easily.
This Student Spotlight was brought to you by Educate.Today.
HEC Films. Explore, inspire, educate, and entertain. HEC Films, just one of the many facets of award-winning content you'll find at hecmedia.org.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. The infamous Dred Scott case started in the St. Louis Circuit Court in 1846. Public historian Cecily Hunter tells us how this case came to be and what resulted from it.
So what began in the St. Louis Circuit Court went all the way to the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, and ultimately ushered in the onset of the Civil War. Dred Scott was enslaved to the Blow family for many years, and then he went on to be sold to Dr. Emerson. Dr. Emerson was a surgeon, and so he traveled. So he went to Illinois and was stationed on a base there. And then he went to the Wisconsin Territory, and that's where Dred Scott met and married Harriet Scott, and they resided in the Wisconsin Territory for some time. Because the slaveholder was moving around because he was a surgeon, they would come back to St. Louis, and ultimately that's when both Dred Scott and Harriet Scott put forth cases in the circuit court. Ultimately, they would argue that because of what was determined by the 1824 court case, Winnie v. Whiteside, once free, always free. So essentially, if they were able to be brought to a free state, then they by proxy should be able to be free people. There had been many cases just in St. Louis alone that people were arguing for their freedom. You have people emancipating themselves by the court. You have people self-emancipating. You have people having everyday forms of resistance. And even still, despite that, there's still pushback on the legal side. And so they made that similar case. This was an 11-year court proceeding, which ultimately determined that Dred Scott, Harriet Scott, and their children were considered to be enslaved people and not citizens of the United States. And it sent shockwaves throughout the country. To have it stamped as that they are not considered to be citizens reinforced the institution of slavery in everyday living situations and so forth. So a year following the Supreme Court's decision, Dred Scott and his family are actually then transferred to the Blow family. Taylor Blow emancipates them, and for about a year, Dred Scott would live to be a free man before he passed away. Harriet Scott would live until about 1867. His body was then interned at Calvary Cemetery.
Next week on History Spotlight, the reason for the St. Louis baby tooth survey of the 1960s.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Cyber Monday shopping. Think of all the blue light exposure on this single day. While looking for deals, is blue light protection something you or your secret Santa should add to the cart?
So the tinted sunscreen is this UV Restore, and it has a mix of the transparent zinc oxide, but then it'll also protect from that blue light.
Dr. Baja Mahalski is a dermatologist at Siteman Cancer Center on the Washington University Medical Campus.
Assistant professor in medicine in the Division of Dermatology, and I'm a Mohs surgeon, treating skin cancers with surgery and then also doing cosmetic dermatology.
Dr. Mahalski says there's a lot to learn about blue light exposure from our devices, especially with the way people are glued to computers and phones. Cyber Monday is a peak time, so maybe it's time to give it some thought.
There are a lot of studies ongoing in vitro and then also in vivo, so looking to see how blue light could affect skin cells, in the lab setting, but then also how could it affect skin at a patient level. I think that there will be more and more studies coming out, especially because I don't see our exposure from blue light going down anytime soon with our computers and smartphones.
Studies are focused on any possible risk of skin cancer and skin damage from blue light exposure.
I haven't seen that blue light could necessarily lead to skin cancer. I think most of the research right now is showing that blue light can accelerate photoaging.
And to what extent? While not enough is fully known about blue light exposure, there is support for investigation.
What we're finding more and more recently is that the majority of radiation from the sun that actually reaches the earth is actually in the form of visible light, which would include blue light. So blue light is part of the visible light spectrum, and blue light has the highest energy of the visible light.
So Dr. Michalski follows the research closely and informs patients who should ask about blue light exposure concerns.
So what they found is that blue light can increase certain things in our skin. So something called reactive oxygen species, and then also increasing the level of what we call MMPs or matrix metalloproteinases. Those two combined can accumulate, and if enough of that accumulates, it could lead to damage to our skin cells. So it could lead to more pigmentation or brown spots. It can also break down collagen faster and also decrease our levels of elasticity in our skin, so lead to more like skin sagging. So most of the attention on blue light has more to do with photoaging than necessarily skin cancer.
Michalski has also examined the research about blue light protection.
There are new sunscreens that could protect from blue light, and so maybe patients should look to invest in some of those. To actually protect from blue light, sunscreens have to actually be visible on the skin. So tinted sunscreens are really actually more helpful to protect from blue light because they can reflect that blue light. So tinted sunscreens, the thing that actually gives them tint is an ingredient called iron oxide. And so there are a bunch of different formulations of different amounts of iron oxide or different colors of iron oxide, and those can protect from blue light.
So while holiday shopping online, should tinted sunscreen be added to the list?
The biggest difference with this one is that this is tinted.
She believes the technology for tinted sunscreen products needs more development before people really embrace them.
Tinted sunscreen is sometimes a hard sell for patients who feel like that tint is not matching their skin type. So I think if we could improve our technology to the point where a sunscreen feels good on the skin, for men it's hard to convince them to wear tinted sunscreen. So I've handed my husband tinted sunscreen. He was like, "What is this makeup that you've handed me?" So I think that that's, another thing we have to work on is we want our sunscreens to be appealing to everyone. We need to be better at creating tints that match all skin types.
An inspirational song later on Spotlight.
I'm Zach Smithy, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I focus primarily on the process, and that is what this show is about, the process. So the title of the show is Waves and Texture. As you walk into the Foundry's East Gallery where my show is, you'll see 6 pieces. 2 of those pieces are from my Texture series, 2 are from my Wave series, and the final 2 pieces of the 6 are where those 2 series collide, so they're textural waves. For the Wave series, I used oil-based enamel, and I layered these colors in a cup, and then I pour those layered colors out onto a board. And then I pour that board onto the canvas. And I use oil-based enamel in particular over other types of paint because they don't want to mix and turn to mud. You see these tight bands of color next to each other that seem to vibrate. And that's really the effect that I'm going for with those pieces. In the Texture series, I've got several different types of texture used, from a textural medium that I loaded into a caulk gun to a brittle plaster-like texture that I used in one of the waves. And you can tell the difference between that brittle plaster-like material in the blue wave as opposed to the more gelatin-like texture that I used in the black wave behind me. It has more flow, it doesn't look as crunchy. But that's the thing about it, is each material brings its own look. So it's really the medium that defines the final product and how it behaves, and my quest to try to control that natural behavior of the medium. Being an artist focused on the process, I don't get too involved in the what. I'm more focused on how, the art of creating art. When you come into this show, I want you to bring your own experiences and your own point of view to the work. For me, personally, I work 7 days a week for years on end. So waves are a sense of calming, relaxation, meditation. For you, it might be something else. And I hope you leave with a positive experience. Waves and Texture will be on view at the Foundry until December 23rd. And for more information, visit foundryartcenter.org.
HEC Media, supporting and promoting the arts. Check out our features and shows on theater, dance, music, the visual arts, and more. Find this and all our award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Known as the blue-eyed soul singer, Danny Liston's Everybody album is resonating with music fans around the world.
I called an old friend of mine, Jim Gaines, who's a Grammy Award-winning producer. He's done Stevie Ray Vaughan and Journey and Santana. The list goes on and on. I met him doing an album with Mama's Pride and told him, I just feel like you and I need to do another record together. And he said, I agree. He goes, but I want this one to be about vocals, not all guitars. I want you to cut a blue-eyed soul record. He goes, that's where your wheelhouse is. I had major players, guys that I've been extremely fortunate enough to work with before. They're like the Memphis A-list rhythm section. And they make you feel like you're the main artist on the planet. Like nothing else matters but your music. You bring your ideas, and then they make all their own notes, and then you record it. And they'll throw ideas in themselves, you know. It's like, it's kind of crazy when they're like, yeah, remember when we did this thing on the Paul Simon record? And I'm like, yeah, that ought to work. That ought to be fine with me.
The album's title track, Everybody, shares an uplifting message for today's world.
I get concerned that people are becoming individuals in the wrong areas, that they feel like I can isolate. And it's like, no, man, isolation, that's not a good thing. People need people. You know, if you've got a problem, it's good to share that problem, because you might think you're the craziest guy in the room, and you share that problem with somebody and you find out there's 10 people within an arm shot of you that have that same issue. You know, so you realize it's not all you. And so I just felt like, because the chorus says everybody needs somebody's help. Ain't nobody can do it all by themselves, because everybody needs somebody else. And we do. Everybody needs someone in their life.
The track also features stellar vocalist Becca Bramlett.
She sang on a lot of Johnny Lang stuff, Lie to Me, stuff like that. Just an amazing, amazing vocalist. She blew me away. In my opinion, her vocal lifted that song. I mean, it took it from being a good song to a great song.
For the intricate harmonies needed for the song Old Friend, Danny enlisted his brother and Mama's Pride bandmate Pat Liston to record the tracks.
I just sent him the track and said, send it back to me when you're done. And like 2 days later, he sent it back, and I gave it to Jim, and he's like, well, this is perfect. It's like having two of you.
Mama's Pride celebrated 50 years of music with a sold-out concert at the pageant last December. It's the history of Mama's Pride that prepared Danny for the successful Everybody album recording process.
The thing with Mama's Pride was, and it's what made Mama's Pride Mama's Pride. You'd bring a song to Mama's Pride, and no matter how you wrote it, how you heard it in your head, we always called it would be Pride-icized. By the time it ran through the motor and we rehearsed it, it became a Mama's Pride song. Being part of a band prepares you for that stuff, so it's not intimidating. It's more like you just put yourself back in that frame of mind, and you're comfortable in that environment.
One of the album's most inspirational songs is A Change Has Come. It is in this song that Danny reveals his uplifting story of recovery and redemption. He recently celebrated 35 years of sobriety.
That's kind of like a personal testimony of my life, you know, through my addiction issues. There's stuff that goes along with addiction issues. Once you get sober, it's not like, hey, I'm sober, now I've got it all together. There's stuff that took you to that place. And you need to dig deeper and find out what that is. And through my faith, I was able to do that and find out what a lot of the ugly parts of my life were and try to rectify those. I mean, I'm far from perfect, but I'm better than I used to be. So that song is kind of like a celebration of a change has come over me.
The upbeat song, Goodbye Jack Daniels, is going viral worldwide as the recovery anthem.
Goodbye, Jack Daniels, and a powder from Peru. I wanna get on with my life, so there's only one thing to do. I need to start hanging around with Jesus, and quit hanging around with you. Goodbye, Jack Daniels, and the powder from Peru. When I was just a boy, I thought that your company would bring me joy. Yes, I did. Wasn't till later I figured out. Yes, I did. My life was a wreck when we hung out.
I wanted to have a song that had a kind of a happy chorus, you know, almost like a cleaned up version of Call You a Cab. But I wanted the verses to be a little more serious. Like, look, we're dealing with a real issue.
Goodbye, Jack Daniels. That's all I'm done with.
Next week, it was called the Baby Tooth Survey, what it has to do with radioactive fallout. Plus, how to best cope with the holiday blues and put your mental health first. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.